The acrid smell of smoke filled Maya. Chen's lungs as she stumbled through the underground parking garage, her eyes stinging from the toxic fumes. Behind her, flames licked at the walls of the corporate building where she worked as a night janitor, where moments ago she'd been emptying trash bins on the executive floor. She should have been running toward the exit, toward safety, toward her 2 daughters waiting at home. Instead, she was running deeper into the inferno, back toward the man she'd found collapsed near the elevators. The same man who'd signed the memo that cut her health care benefits last month. Maya had every reason to leave Marcus Blackwell behind. The billionaire CEO of Blackwell Industries had never once looked at her. In the 3 years she'd cleaned his office. To him, she was invisible. Just another face in the army of workers who kept his empire, running while he accumulated wealth that could feed a small nation. But as she'd passed his crumpled form in the smoke-filled hallway, something ancient and undeniable had stirred in her chest. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind. "We don't measure people by what they have, Mija. We measure them by what we do when they have nothing left." So Maya ran back. She dragged all 200 pounds of unconscious billionaire across her shoulders, her 5'3" frame screaming in protest. Her knees buckled twice on the stairs, her vision blurred from smoke inhalation. She thought of her daughters, Sophia, 8, and little Elena, just 5, and wondered if they'd understand why their mother had risked never coming home. But she kept moving, one agonizing step at a time, because leaving someone to die wasn't something she could live with, regardless of who they were or what they'd done. The parking garage was a maze of concrete and shadows, but Maya knew every inch of it from her nightly rounds. She navigated by instinct, her lungs burning, Marcus's dead weight threatening to pull her down with every step. When she finally burst through the emergency exit into the cool night air, collapsing onto the sidewalk with Marcus still draped across her back, the paramedics rushed forward like angels descending. "You saved his life," one of them said as they loaded Marcus onto a stretcher, hooking him up to oxygen. Another minute in there and he would have been gone. Maya nodded, too exhausted to speak, watching as they whisked the CEO away in an ambulance, lights flashing against the night sky. She refused her own ride to the hospital, thinking only of getting home to her girls, of holding them tight and promising that everything would be okay, even though she wasn't sure it would be. The building fire made the morning news, of course. Marcus Blackwell had been rescued by an unnamed employee who'd risked her life to save him. The reporters loved the human interest angle, though they seemed more fascinated by Marcus's multi-billion-dollar empire than by the woman who'd actually done the saving. Maya watched snippets of coverage while getting her daughters ready for school, feeling oddly disconnected from the whole thing, as if she were watching someone else's story unfold. Then Marcus's assistant called. Would Maya please come to Blackwell Industries' temporary headquarters? Mr. Blackwell wished to thank his rescuer personally, and there might be, the assistant hinted with barely concealed excitement, a reward involved. Maya almost said no. She had another cleaning job to get to, bills that wouldn't pay themselves, a life that didn't stop just because she'd played hero for a night. But Sophia was listening, her eyes wide with the kind of hope that Maya couldn't bring herself to crush. "Maybe he'll help us, Mama," Sophia whispered. "Maybe he'll give you money for Elena's medicine." So Maya went, still wearing her cleaning uniform, her hair pulled back in the same practical bun she wore every day. The temporary offices were in another Blackwell property downtown, all glass and steel and modern art that probably cost more than Maya would make in her lifetime. She felt like a smudge on their pristine world as Marcus's assistant led her to a conference room where the man himself waited. Marcus Blackwell looked different without smoke and flames as a backdrop. He was in his early 40s, impeccably dressed despite his ordeal, with only a slight pallor and a bandage on his temple, to show he'd nearly died 12 hours earlier. He stood when Maya entered, extending his hand with a practiced smile that had probably closed 1,000 deals. "Ms. Chen," he said warmly, "I understand I owe you my life." Maya shook his hand briefly, uncomfortable with the theatrics. Anyone would have done the same. "But they didn't," Marcus replied. "You did. And I want to properly thank you. I'm prepared to offer you $50,000 as a token of my gratitude." $50,000. The number hung in the air between them like a miracle. Maya thought of Elena's medications, of the physical therapy sessions they couldn't afford, of the school supplies she bought, secondhand in the winter. Coats she patched instead of replaced. $50,000 could change their lives. There's just one small matter we need to address first, Marcus continued, his smile unwavering. The fire marshal's report came back this morning. They've determined the fire was deliberately set. Arson. The security footage shows you entering my office about 20 minutes before the fire started. He paused, letting that sink in. I'm sure there's a perfectly innocent explanation, but my lawyers advise that we clarify your whereabouts and actions that evening before proceeding with any reward. The conference room suddenly felt smaller, airless. Maya's mind raced back through the night before. Yes, she'd been cleaning Marcus's office, emptying his trash, wiping down his desk. She'd been on the executive floor because that was her job, the job she did every night that apparently no one had bothered to tell. Marcus Blackwell she had. I was cleaning, Maya said slowly. I work for the janitorial contractor. I've cleaned your office every weeknight for 3 years. Something flickered across Marcus's face, surprise, perhaps, or embarrassment. But it was quickly replaced by a more calculating expression. The thing is, Ms. Chen, several executives have reported valuable items missing from their offices over the past few months. A Rolex watch, some confidential documents, petty cash, and now there's a fire with you present at the scene, and a rather suspicious timing to your heroic rescue. He leaned forward slightly. I want to believe in your innocence. I truly do. But my board is pressuring me to pursue charges, unless we can definitively rule you out as a suspect. Maya felt something crack inside her chest, something that had been holding her together through years of invisible labor, of being unseen and undervalued. She'd risked her life for this man, nearly left her daughters orphaned, and now he was threatening her with arrest to cover for his own company's failures. Let me understand this correctly, Maya said, her voice steady despite the fury building inside her. You're saying that unless I can prove I didn't steal from you or burn down your building, you'll have me arrested after I saved your life? I'm saying we need to clear up some inconsistencies, Marcus replied smoothly. I'm sure you understand the position I'm in. Shareholders, insurance companies, legal liability, it's complicated. Help me help you, Ms. Chen. Maya stood up. Her hands were shaking, but her voice came out clear and strong. I'll help you, Mr. Blackwell. I'll tell you exactly what happened last night. But I'll tell it to the police, not to you. She walked out of the conference room, past the stunned assistant, out of the glass and steel building into the real world, where people worked 2 jobs and still couldn't afford their children's medicine, where saving someone's life could somehow get you accused of trying to end it. Maya went straight to the police station and filed her own report. She told them everything, the fire, the rescue, and Marcus Blackwell's thinly veiled threats that morning. She turned over her employee records showing her regular schedule, her security clearance, her spotless employment history. She demanded they investigate Blackwell Industries' missing items and asked why a company with dozens of cameras somehow only had footage of her doing her job, not of anyone actually stealing. The investigation that followed was swift and damning. The fire had been started by faulty wiring in the building's outdated electrical system, wiring that Blackwell Industries had been cited for not updating. Despite repeated safety violations, the missing items turned out to be a combination of executives, personal negligence, and one junior accountant who'd been embezzling for months. The security footage showed Maya exactly where she was supposed to be, doing exactly what she was paid to do. But the real revelation came when investigators discovered that Marcus Blackwell had slashed his insurance policy on the building just 2 months prior to save money, and was now facing potential bankruptcy if he couldn't prove the fire was arson rather than his own negligence. He'd needed a scapegoat, and Maya, invisible, powerless Maya, had seemed like the perfect candidate. The story exploded across the same news channels that had praised the mysterious rescuer just days before. Public opinion turned savagely against Marcus Blackwell. The man who'd been saved by a minimum wage worker had tried to destroy her life to save his fortune. The irony was lost on no one. Maya pressed charges, not for the money, though her lawyer assured her she had a strong civil case, but because some things mattered more than wealth. Integrity mattered. Truth mattered. The idea that even invisible people had value and deserved justice mattered. The day Marcus Blackwell was arrested for attempted fraud and evidence tampering, Maya was at home making breakfast for her daughters. She didn't watch it on the news. She didn't need to. She'd already won the only victory that mattered when she'd walked out of that conference room with her dignity intact. 3 months later, a settlement was reached. Blackwell Industries paid Maya a sum large enough to cover Elena's treatments, put both girls through college, and buy the small house Maya had always dreamed of. Marcus Blackwell resigned as CEO and faced criminal charges that would likely keep him in court for years. But the money, while life-changing, wasn't what Maya talked about when reporters finally tracked her down. She talked about her grandmother's wisdom, about measuring people by their actions when others had nothing left. She talked about how she'd saved Marcus Blackwell not because he deserved it, but because everyone deserved it. And she'd turned him in not out of revenge, but because everyone, even invisible janitors, deserved the truth. "I don't regret pulling him from that fire," Maya told one persistent journalist. "I regret that he still doesn't understand why I did it. Maybe someday he will. Maybe someday he'll realize that the people he never saw were the ones holding up his entire world."